Hey there, friends and enemies, Jopa here again, and today we have to have the Divinity discussion because the entire Destiny 2 community is blowing up with this across Twitter and Reddit. I'm seeing it on YouTube now, all over the place. It all started with Salto Greppo, the three-time world's first day one raider, who said Divinity has been too dominant for too long and basically mandatory for day one raids and other hard endgame content. Now, there's a lot of back and forth. I want to first say the toxicity has been out of control. A lot of the community reacting in a way that is honestly frustrating to see with someone just giving their opinion. We've seen it across any game that you could possibly think of where hardcore players tend to blame casual players for changes and vice versa because they think the developers only listen to either end of the spectrum. Where in kind of the middle ground, I don't believe either is true. I think the developers are just trying to keep the game as healthy as possible and making decisions that'll keep as many players playing for as long as possible. Now, personally, I think it's good for the game, and this is going to be contrary to popular opinion, I do believe, when PvE buffs and nerfs are happen. I don't think something like Mountaintop, something like Recluse, and something like Anarchy should be dominant for years and years. Same thing with Divinity. My point on that is the game, like a game like Destiny, is ever evolving and it needs to evolve with different metas in order to stay fun, stay different. And you can't just keep making the next thing more powerful, the next thing more powerful, because there is a power creep issue. Now, Destiny 2 has definitely seen some power creep, and some of that is okay. I think we're 5 years into the game, so having some power creep is going to happen. It's inevitable because you want to keep players coming back. You want to keep them feeling powerful, feeling like space magic gods, and in order to do so, there's going to be power creep where some, especially the older content, is going to feel easier. Even things like Grandmaster, I believe, feel easier with the 3.0 subclasses and some of the weapons we've got. With Divinity specifically, though, there's a lot of different things to think about. One, it does help players who are not really familiar with doing raids have a bit of an easier time. It does help because it does make raids more accessible to people who may have physical disabilities, physical issues that prevent them from performing these raids, and Divinity does help with that as well. I've seen various threads pointing to that. And so that's also important and something to keep in mind, which is often overlooked in the toxic back and forth. I do think ultimately the game is never going to be hard enough for the top tier players, and they're always going to be looking for ways to make the game harder, but that's on them, in my opinion, in order to do so. Destiny 2 and Bungie cannot cater towards those players and make it so those players are going to have all of this. They cannot produce enough items, whether it's cosmetics, whether it's new loot that's exclusive, to make it worth chasing for that small, tiny percentage of the player base and have them keep playing. So if they make the master raids so much different than the regular raids, it's just not worth the time and effort. We saw that in Destiny 1, and they've said basically that it's impossible to sustain and do variety in the endgame modes. Whether they do something like permanent contest mode or something like that, where you can earn something, I still think that's not going to be enough for people to earn the loot that they want to loot. Circling back around to the Divinity issue, I do believe it's too strong personally, and I do think a nerf would be helpful overall. I don't think it's mandatory. I think everything in Destiny 2 right now can be beaten with a variety of weapons and armor and loadouts. I do think just looking at day one raids, it's 2 days out of the year. You can't really take that into consideration when you're looking at the long-term health of the game. And you can't look at players who are top of the top 1% world's first raiders and like their game plays out so different than someone still on PS4 struggling to get one raid done. Like, this is not the same game, and you can't compare that. And so, while I understand wanting a skill gap, I don't believe hardcore changes or complete overhauls to the system are worthwhile for the majority of the player base personally. And while that is not perfect solution, like it's not great for the top tier players, they're just never going to be enough of a challenge for them to always be happy in the game. At the other end of the spectrum, it is very rewarding when a player finally defeats a raid, finally beats a Grandmaster Nightfall, finally does all these things. So you want to make it so people can accomplish these tasks, but also have that feeling of, oh, I finally climbed this mountain that was so difficult for me for so long. And that's something that is a tough balance that a lot of people don't really, I think about, is that you want a challenge, but you don't want an impossible one. And having something like Divinity is helpful for a lot of players, and it's gotten a lot of people their first raid clear. It's gotten people their first Grandmaster clear. And so nerfing this, something else will definitely rise in its wake. There will be something new that's going to pop up that's going to be as strong or required, just like Well of Radiance. And whether they nerf Resilience or nerf Well of Radiance or nerf Divinity, who knows? I wouldn't be opposed to it personally. I know there will be a lot of backlash if it does happen, and people will blame Salta Greppo and players like that. I don't think that's the way to go. I think Bungie they need to consider a wide range of positions, and that's what they do. And I think they do a pretty decent job of that overall. Not everyone's going to agree, and that's fine, but people can be respectful about it and not jump up in arms and overreact and be blaming folks for having an opinion on a video game where everyone should just be trying to have fun in. Overall, I think that Divinity, if I were in Bungie's position, I would say I do feel like it should be nerfed. I hope that future raids have encounter design that are more like Last Wish, that don't really require you to have Divinity for one reason or another, whether it's different crit modifiers, whether it's just the way it plays out, whether it's like Crota in that original raid where you don't actually do DPS to the boss. Anything like that I think could be helpful and really change up the meta. So I'm really hoping that the new raid we get will do so. Power creep, all that stuff, I think is inevitable. If it gets toned down, I don't think it'll be the end of the world. If it continues to happen, again, I don't think it's the end of the world. We've been at this for years and years. There's really not a lot new that we're going to see in Destiny 2 that's going to completely change the game. Maybe, and this is the suggestion I've said, in order to combat something like Divinity, what if we had more endgame horde modes where there are bosses but not like one individual boss to take down, and there's just waves and waves of enemies to kind of test your builds against? I feel like that's something that could really give a bit of a refresh. And maybe that replaces a dungeon one season or something like that. I don't know, just a thought, something that I've been thinking of for quite some time. This is a conversation that I'm unfortunately almost forced to have, because I've talked about it on stream, I've talked about it with people on Twitter, and everyone is having this talk about Divinity and why it should or should not be changed, the problems, the pros, the cons, and overall I think we need to be kinder to everybody, whether they're giving their feedback in a respectful manner or they're talking about something that you disagree with. All of that is necessary in my opinion, and we just need to be nice to each other and be better to the Guardians. We've all come together in Destiny 2, and we're rocking gold for Child Cancer Awareness Month, so that's a huge thing that I think shows the positives of the Destiny community. I hope we don't show everyone the worst sides for too long, because it's just really unfortunate to see. Anyway, my name is JoPa. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you go into future conversations and be respectful and be kind to each other. And whether there's buffs or nerfs, it's up to Bungie at the end of the day. Don't blame other people for when things get buffed or nerfed. And understand, Destiny is going to be an ever-evolving game, so we're going to see things change, and you just have to get comfortable with it. My name is Jopa. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Destiny 2 content, because I do put a lot on this channel. I hope you have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.